It's good to have you back, Spider-Man.
As the millennium turned, it also marked the shift of domination between DC and Marvel. No, not in a comic book realm, but on the silver screen. This was spearheaded by the two most recognizable brands Marvel had, X-Men and Spider-Man. And the latter had a massively successful opening week, which convinced the brass at Columbia, or more accurately Sony, who owned the IP, to greenlit a second film and rehire the director that made the first one. But how can Sam Raimi top the original, a feat that is rarely done in movie history? Let's find out. I'm Mephisto. Like, share, and subscribe because this is my review of the movie Spider-Man 2.
How'd you do that?
Workout?
Spider-Man 2 is a superhero live-action adaptation of your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, directed by Sam Raimi and written by Alvin Sargent. As I mentioned, Raimi was tasked to continue his version of Spider-Man, so a whole slew of writers were hired in order to come up with the story. Some of them suggested to go with the Gwen Stacy storyline, in which she dies midway through the movie, a storyline that was used years later in a different Spider-Man. And this is because the working title of the sequel was The Amazing Spider-Man. What ended up happening was a bunch of different drafts and treatments that Raimi sifted through and picked the best parts of them and handed in to his writer for a more cohesive story using one of Spider-Man's most notorious villains, Dr. Octavius.
Dr. Octopus. New villain in town. Doc Ock.
The story begins with Peter Parker 2 years after the events of the first film, and we can see him struggling. He is constantly late to his job, to his school, and late paying his rent. And this is because he is torn between his duties as Peter and his obligations as Spider-Man. He even neglects his friendship with Mary Jane, his relationship with his aunt, and with his best friend, Harry Osborn. And with Mary Jane, he's not even coming to her play on Broadway.
But my best friend, who cares so much about me, can't make an 8 o'clock curtain.
By chance, he gets to meet Dr. Octavius and talk to him about his work, which later on gets him invited to the unveiling of the experiment funded by Peter's friend, Harry Osborn. But things take a turn to the worse as the experiment goes wrong and Doc Ock loses not only his wife, but his wits.
The power of the sun in the palm of my hand.
And the crisis that Peter faced at the start of the story only deepens as the story chugs along to the point where he questions himself, his powers, and even his love for MJ.
In my dream, I'm Spider-Man, but I'm losing my powers. I'm climbing a wall, but I keep falling.
When it comes to the story, Spider-Man 2 doesn't really adapt a well-known storyline from the comics. It's more like a collection of bits and pieces cobbled together to make a cohesive unit. The Doc Ock story is partially from his 1963 debut and partially a storyline from the 1966 called If This Be My Destiny. And the Spider-Man storyline about losing his faith in himself was taken from the 1967 Amazing Spider-Man number 50 in a story called Spider-Man No More. But what these bits and pieces ended up doing is make a movie that has very little fight scenes and a lot of storyline encompassing depression, self-worth, confidence, rejected love, and what it means to really be a superhero. So the story ends up being much more robust and full compared to the first film.
I want a life of my own. You've been given a gift, Peter. With great power comes great responsibility.
The best comparison I can make is The Empire Strikes Back to Star Wars, or as everybody knows it as New Hope, where the sequel took everything that worked in the first film and added in more layers of character development and great dialogue to expand the world of our main characters. We learn more about Aunt May and her struggles dealing with Uncle Ben's death. We learn more about the motives of Harry Osborn and his search for vengeance. And we get to see MJ struggle between her love for her new man and the old love that she had for Peter. But because the first Spider-Man film was so successful, the studio must have given Raimi much more free rein because at times, Spider-Man seems less like a superhero flick and more like a horror movie.
You serious?
Now bear with me, it's not a full-on horror movie, it has subtle layers. There are lots of screams that you can particularly find in a slasher movie, there are lots of tropes from a horror movie genre and nods to Raimi's previous work, and all within the confines of a PG-13 movie. In terms of the casting, I will hit only the two main roles, Spidey and Doc Ock. Tobey Maguire reprised his role from the first film, although after many shenanigans behind the scenes, which including the hiring and firing of Jake Gyllenhaal. And it seems like he's not missed a step. In fact, he was so attuned with Sam Raimi's vision for the character, it pushed his performance in this movie. It made it a whole lot better from the original film.
If my enemies found out about you, if you got hurt, I could never forgive myself.
Over on the other side, Alfred Molina kind of stumbled into this role. He won it over Ed Harris and Christopher Walken, according to Raimi, and according to Raimi, it was mostly down to his performance in the movie Frida. But Molina is an actor's actor who didn't like doing his own stunt work. But once he got into the role, he seems to revel in playing this bad guy. Not being a comic book reader, over the years I've heard many comic book fans say that Molina's portrayal was very close to what you read in the comics, especially in the original ones. But to me, Molina just acted his ass off yet again, because he is one of those actors that can embody any role that you put in front of him, no matter what genre it is. From Maverick to Chocolat to his bit role in Boogie Nights, Molina is a great actor, and his role in Doc Ock was fantastic.
Steal it? No, I'm not a criminal. The real crime would be not to finish what we started.
On the whole, Spider-Man 2 is a much better chapter in Sam Raimi's eventual Spider-Man trilogy. In fact, it is the best one. At times, it is serious, at times scary, and at times goofy and filled with Raimi's fingerprints and humor. It of course got a cameo by his own brother, and of course the amazing Bruce Campbell, but putting that aside, he was given a chance to do a straight-up homage for his Evil Dead 2 movie within the confines of a comic book movie, which is a feat on his own. Let's just say it's something for the viewers who love his earlier work and will recognize the tropes once it is presented on screen. But the movie isn't without its flaws. Because of the myriad of story threads that are told in the movie, some avenues led to nowhere and some side quests were talked about and even shown but were unnecessary and took too much screen time. The theatrical cut was around 2 hours, and the subsequent special editions and extra scene added some context, but again, set up things that are not really paid off and added in even more bloat. And at the end of the day, if the movie could have been trimmed down to around 100 minutes, you wouldn't even feel duped for not knowing that information. And that is the movie's only real fault. So I will highly recommend you pick up this movie to watch, even if you haven't even watched the original, because Sam Raimi does such a great job of explaining everything without actually telling you the story of the first film, which to me is always a markup of a good movie that can stand alone and tell you a whole complete tale without bogging you down with yet another origin story. So all you get is yet another great Spider-Man story.
I want Spider-Man!
I thank you for watching, and remember, hope is a good thing, maybe even the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. I'll see you on the next video.